Okay, welcome everyone. I'm actually very, very pleased to have people like Amlan and Swoyan onto this call because this actually, I think they're very, very well educated into what's happening in the cutting edge of education and education technology. So I think that we should have a very interesting panel that will give a lot of learnings to all of us at the end of the day. So let's start off, just jumping straight. Amlan, my question to you is that, of course, everybody knows that COVID-19 has changed the education sector. We don't have to get into how it's done it. But the key thing is, let's talk about the assessment model that we've been using, the classic short and talk textbook exam-based model that we've been using so fast. Let's talk about, in your mind, what is the future of assessment considering COVID and post-COVID? What's going to happen in assessment, and where do you see technology playing a role in it? Amlan? I think he's frozen. Okay. While he's getting back, I'm going to throw the question to you, Swoyan. Give us a talk about assessment and Edtech, what's happening there.
I think to just give a quick introduction, people started getting accustomed to the fact that let's go online, let's start teaching online. Once the teachers and the students got settled with an online platform, soon the challenge came how the exams are now get conducted. Right. Where cheating was the biggest challenge that teachers had to deal with. And that's how it all started. So then people started exploring online exams, platforms. I would say in a nutshell that it's in a very nascent stage right now in terms of exploration. People are exploring different multiple avenues to conduct assessments and exams. Multiple universities are going on multiple levels. Some are using very advanced software, going with proctoring. Some are using very manual-based examination and evaluation system. That's the overall idea of it on a crux, like so.
Okay, great. Amlan, what are your thoughts on assessment and technology?
So we have to take the use of technology. Various technologies are available. Actually, I was seeing a page from Berkeley University, and what they're telling that we can obviously, most of the online examinations are based on the MCQ type of quizzes or that, but they are also using a technology where the answers are a little bit partitioned, in the sense that you have to work on the paper a bit of the answer, and then you have to put some clues of the answer, so that the examiner understands that you have actually worked on the problem, because the question what arises in many of the engineering and scientific assessment is that they cannot validate the reasoning or the capability of the student only by going to the MCQ type of choices. So many of the courses, they don't actually try to focus on MCQ, but I think there are a lot of techniques are coming up, where the question, starting from the setting of the question papers to the moderation of the question papers, and there can be a random choice of the questions which are being given by the faculties, and then every student can get a different set of questions online, and there can be a mix of this MCQs and this type of workable. That means a sort of they have to give in a sequence the answers in a sequence, so that the intermediary concepts can also be taken or can be graded.
Great, it's interesting. So, I was actually talking to some of the universities globally. So we work with a lot of international universities. And what they're saying essentially is that so far, a lot of the world focuses on summative assessments. That means that you study. At the end, there's a test or an exam that just assesses what you learned in the course. A lot of universities now are moving towards formative assessment. That means that it's not how much you memorize to the end of the semester, but more, are there assessments they can do while you're studying? For example, can they give you assignments? Can they give you pop quizzes? Can they give you projects? Things to do, and they keep on assessing that. Because what they're trying to do is move away from memorization to understanding of the subject matter, which is where formative assessments come in. Which again talks about the whole idea about education technology, because with formative assessments, you can do a lot more things. You can actually have a lot of mobile technology that gives pop quizzes when the person is just at home. You can actually have, let's say, group assignments on laptops. A lot of things you can do instead of the classic paper-based model. And I think if you look at COVID, we're now being forced to just use Zoom and other things to sort of teach. I think if assessment moves from summative, which is just pure exams and tests, to more formative, which is more assignments and projects and checking has the student understood, I think we probably would be going in the right direction. But let's sort of address that to some point. As you know, is that most of the problem for a lot of schools and colleges is that when they set an exam for a kid, half the time they're concerned about cheating. That, okay, the kid's sitting down and got some notes written on their mobile phone, or old days they used to write stuff with their palms and have I think there are probably hundreds of different ways of cheating, and you could probably talk them all. But now you have a situation where exams now have to be done remotely. That means that the exam is set up, but you have the students sitting at home and doing the exam. So when you talk about the whole concept of remote proctoring, so Swoyan, what do you think about remote proctoring, and what can colleges do, what schools do to prevent cheating and making sure remote proctoring is fair?
So before I start, I'm going to give a quick idea to our viewers about what proctoring is. Proctoring is actually nothing but invigilation, right? You all know that. So what happens there is you basically invigilate someone giving an examination. What is happening these days is the pre-existing online modules that we had with us, they didn't have a proctoring feature into it. Today, that online examination had a mandate. Proctoring has to be a part of the evaluation process, or else we can't have the anti-cheating feature in the whole system itself. And that is where the idea of proctoring has come down. Now, proctoring was divided into two parts. There was human proctoring also, there was AI-driven proctoring. Human where invigilators come in, they watch you just the way we are talking, and students give exam. AI is where actually there's an automated system. So if they track the complete child's body, right from eyes to fingers and everything. So be it a gadget coming in, be it the child moving here or there, or be the child talking to someone, immediately red flags appear on the video and the child is being recorded completely, right? So that is how the AI did come in, AI proctoring did come in. Talking about its adaptation so far, I was researching on it and I could find out that a lot of foreign universities, the posh ones, have started actually adapting to the AI proctoring. But when I talk about an Indian-centric approach, in India, majorly the adaptation has been pretty slow. Of course, some leading universities like there is GMAT, IIM Kashipur, OP Jindal Global University. So all these universities have gone out public saying that they're adopting to AI proctoring methods, but then the adaptation has not been that great. Talking about school sector, the sector that we represent, there has not been, there's been less than 0.1% of adaptation when it comes to proctoring, be it human-based or AI-based. And talking about the challenges that actually this model comes up with, talking about facts and numbers, India has got 40 crore children, like students, be it school students or college students. And only two countries have more population than that, and that's India and China. That's the number of children that we have with us, students that we have with us. And more than 98% of the students do not go to luxurious schools or colleges. When we talk about having an online proctoring system to be implemented, students back at home need to start having a proper internet connection, a proper laptop with a webcam, and all those things, which is an investment of 25,000-30,000. And 80% of children in India don't even spend that kind of money in school education annually. That is the biggest challenge I'm talking about. When we talk about the adaptation of something at a mass scale, it's a huge cost on the student end. Talking about the cost of AI proctoring for people belonging to the management side of schools. If you negotiate hard, the rate that you're going to come up with for an AI proctoring is 100 rupees per test. Let's assume I represent a school where we've got 4,000 children, and let's say I just do my midterm examination. Let's not talk about our weekly examinations and everything. My midterm examinations, children have to give 5 subjects. So 4,000 children into 5 subjects makes it 20,000 tests. And 100 rupees per test makes it 20 lakhs of an investment. Believe me, our annual expenditure in and all the examinations has been lesser than that in the past few years. So the cost has been a biggest deterrent when it comes to this kind of a thing. Recently I can give you an example in Odisha. What started happening in Odisha was the government here with their government university made it compulsory for children to have a web laptop that is bare minimum with i3 configuration, a webcam, a 1 Mbps speed internet bandwidth, and 3 hours of uninterrupted power supply. Now, how can children take care of such things? How can they? So, with those kind of challenges, current AI proctoring looks very unfeasible to me in terms of implementation at the ground level. Only poshest of universities can probably accept it out, but the mass scale implementation is something I've not been yet sure of.
So would you even believe, just following up on that AI proctoring point, Swoyan, is that do you think it's also unfair? Because the thing is that they're saying that we will actually assess if the student's cheating or not based on the AI's understanding of where their eyes are going or what they're doing. So do you think AI will ever replace human beings in this case?
See, AI can't replace human beings, like that's for sure. But AI can, of course, do certain work that can't be. So basically, how the technology works for proctoring is the way we are talking, we are being recorded. I have personally used that technology as a trial run, so I've seen it. The moment my phone comes up, or the moment another voice starts appearing, or another person walks in, a red flag starts appearing on the video, and the video is being recorded and being accessible to the admin of an examination. So if you have a doubt on a particular child, you can at least look at the whole video and check if AI has defaulted or not. And at places, it's much better than trusting a human being. Human being can falter, right? But a video is a direct proof of what is going to happen or not. So, I mean, that's still the best mode available with us. So it can't replace, but it is what it is.
So,
Right?
Amlan, what are your thoughts? Do you think
so AI proctoring is also a big issue when it goes to the legal litigation type of issues, because you can't depend on the AI based scans, right? What we are trying to do, we are trying to find outliers in your scene, and those everything will be flagged as red, right? And that might not be always related to the questions and the answers what the students are giving. So you cannot directly prove in the court of the law that the red flag a red flag assumes that. So what I would try to focus is that more will be the assessment what you actually try to discuss, right? And that is the more towards an holistic, and that perfectly follows the Bloom's taxonomy also. Okay, because if you see the Bloom's taxonomy, they actually goes from remembering to conceptualization and to application and to contribution to the knowledge domain, right? So I think proctoring will be a very tough issue. That means unless we have a society which is economically viable, a society which is fine with this IT, okay, the usage of the IT, and also the law and litigations, because when it comes to the university levels, might not be in the school's internal exams, but when it comes to the board exams, when it comes to the university level exams, a lot of cases of litigations will happen, and that's why many university cannot adapt that type of things in their exam scenario. So I think more it will be continuous assessment, more it will be based on quizzes, more it will be based on the mixed bag of questions which will be offered to you within a limited period of time. And I think the questions will be more interesting. Okay, it is not a straight cut answer to just remembering and just getting the marks. And those type of evaluations will be more coming into play, okay, in this particular scenario.
Great. I think it's interesting you just taking on your point. The thing is that if you look at the classic proctoring model, the exam model in India, is that, again, it's back to the idea that what percentage of the course material has the student memorized, and you have to make sure that they're not referring to books when they're answering the question, because the questions are standardized, and the closer you are to the correct answer, that's fine. But if you look at a lot of the liberal arts universities and universities globally, they focus on things like open book exams. That means that all access to all the information in the textbook online is available, but they will give you a complex problem to solve using the available information. So maybe, Amlan, your thoughts. If you looked at colleges moving to an open book exam model, where basically they can access Google, they can access textbooks and answer complex questions, do you think then is there even a need for remote proctoring then? Because then that whole issue of cheating doesn't come up, because it's just based on the students' brains.
Yeah, that's my point also. And many of the internal tests are done in that way. Many of our internal exams in our universities are done in an open book system. Many of the universities in the country also, but may not be the final exams, right? Because internal exams have a lot of flexibilities in time of the faculty who is assessing, and that actually contributes to the 30 or 40% of the total grade, right? 60 are the end term exams, and end term exams, the problem is that you have to have a larger number of students. You have to have a larger schedule which you have to make, and that's why. But I still think that in the case of US or UK, the grading depends on the professor, right? It doesn't depend on the particular department or the particular university. So a professor grades a student, right? That means in his or her own way of grading. So so I think those modalities will be coming up. AI will be used in the very good cause, but for preparing the content, right?
Okay.
That means AI has a fascinating job to understand the learner's capability. So what happens in the classroom? In a classroom, you have 45 minutes, right? In a 45 or 1 hour, you have to cater a student who is a slow learner, who is a first learner, who is an average learner, right?
Right.
And you cannot give different time to the different students, right?
Correct.
Whereas in the case of LMS or adaptive learning, right, you can actually give a different amount of quanta of knowledge and quanta of that means of exercises to the different students. And I have found also a research which has actually found whether a student is a very progressive student or a little regressive student based on the way he or she is navigating the online materials. So the way the online materials are being navigated by a student, okay, that can be tracked, and that particular pattern can be classified using the AI, and you can so knowledge will be more supplementary sort of supportive type of scenario in this particular pandemic scenario instead of a decisive. Okay, you must be give a supportive knowledge so the students can learn, instead of telling that, oh, you are very bad, you are very good, you are excellent, and you are average, you just label them. And we have seen that label doesn't work in the real life. Many of the cases, many of the students who have done well in college or universities or high schools, they have done excellent in practical life because those labels are not actual labels. So that's the way education has to be planned. And I think colleges, high schools, university has to think to enrich those concepts, those internal concepts in the mind of the students, and then AI will have a great effect on the total scenario of education.
Makes sense. Okay, great. So actually, we're in the interesting point of our conversation where we've actually covered the structured questions. So now I'm actually going to make sure that each three of us become moderators. That means we can ask each other questions based on the subject area of assessment. So I'm actually going to start by going off script and ask you guys that one thing that you said, Amlan, which I think was interesting, and I want to get Swoyan's input, is that you said that very often the teachers themselves are used to a certain method of exam setting. You know, they look at the standard textbook, have the standard question that they set, and then they give it to the students. And the easiest thing to do is see how close the students' answers match the standard textbook answers. And it's an easy, for lack of a better term, a brain dead method of doing things, because it's, they have thousands of papers to correct and they don't get much paid and they don't have much time to correct them. So in your mind, if they had to move from the classic memorization driven exam model to the assessment model, which is open book or formative or looking at other areas, what would we need to do for the faculty, or let's say the teachers in India, to make them adapt to what would have to happen for the teacher to adapt to this new method of assessment? So anyone would, go ahead.
Yeah. So obviously there should be a sort of transformation is required, right? Because India is a vast country. India has a lot of diversities. That means both in the level of knowledge creation and knowledge dissemination. Okay, so obviously, and the pedagogical stuff what is involved here, okay, needs to be a sort of training or adaptation should be there for the faculty levels also, right? And that's why we require a lot of workshops on how to prepare a learning content in this domain, in this electronic domain, as well as how to make up the assessments, right? And those are really required. Yeah, those are really required.
Okay, Swoyan, what are your thoughts?
So I'm going to present a very different perspective coming from a school background of stories. Okay, so unlike universities, where universities have got a free hand to set their own curriculum and a free hand to conduct their own examination, we with schools do not have that thing. Ultimately, the bottom line is the board results in 10th and 12th dominate everything around. So unless it's CBSE or ICSE coming up with a different pattern of exam altogether, even if we start doing an open book way of just promoting understanding, eventually child will start getting affected at some way or the other, because the overall umbrella demands a child to memorize things, go and puke out the answers on the examination board. So even if though I completely agree to the fact that open book is the best way of understanding today, because it's about understanding and learning. Content is accessible to us at every point of time. No point remembering the formulas. What matters is applying the formulas critically. So even if I completely agree to that particular thing, but in our kind of a context, when I look at applying it in the ground level reality, there are bigger people in place that need to change the system, and we're just following it up. So that's another perspective to the whole discussion that I'd like to add on.
Very good. So Swoyan, do you actually want to ask a question to the two of us? Any question you want to ask, or Amlan?
I want to understand one thing. Like, you come from, all of you have an education background that you're coming from, running some kind of an educational institution, right? So have you? We are talking about AI here.
Correct.
Has it been the case that actually you have been managed to implement some kind of an AI technology at your place? If you have had some AI application, how has the experience been so far?
So I'll tell you what, from my thing, and I think that one thing we need to understand about artificial intelligence, that's a very, very broad term. It's like saying food, or let's say finance, right? So let me first make a distinction between the two types of AI, right? The AI that that is actually existing in the world is something that's called specific AI. That means that, okay, let's explain you an example. When you talk about, let's say, the computer that defeated Garry Kasparov in chess was called DeepMind, okay, in 1997, right? And after that, there was another computer called AlphaZero that defeated Lee Sedol in the game Go, and like more recently. What is interesting is how come DeepMind, which was able to defeat someone in chess, was not able to defeat someone in the Asian game Go? They were trained only for that specific function. So a lot of AI is specific AI. So for example, a self-driving car cannot go around and actually, let's say, go and let's say come up with a musical score, right? It's specific to that. General AI, which is what human beings do very well. My 3-year-old nephew can actually paint with colors and sing and talk in a general sense. That general AI doesn't exist. So one thing we have to be clear is that AI, only when we get general AI, will you be able to get a lot of the nuance and the human judgment that exists with human beings. And it's going to be very difficult to do that. That being said, so in our institute, just to give a little background, so my doctorate is in the area of employability, right? And a lot of my work is in dealing with behavioral science and data collection. So what we've basically done is that, and we have an assessment model which is based on developing students' personality traits, developing them on communication skills, team working, proactiveness, professionalism, and critical thinking. And we assess the students as they go through the program on these 5 parameters, which makes them employable. What our AI system does is actually assess how they're progressing along these parameters using measurable numbers and coming up with insights that we can use. However, it's not that the computer has a brain that comes up with great insights. All it does is basically track behavior and use data that requires a human being to make a judgment. So a lot of the AI that we talk about today in education is really tracking numbers and giving it to human beings to make a judgment. It's really a decision-making machine.
Yeah.
But that's work for us essentially.
So I will just add a bit different perspective. Yeah, that is supporting supporting what Akhil has said. So AI has 2 parts. One is called the analytics. Okay, that means where we have very well established models. Okay, and what he told that you have the student data, you have the student record, you have their behaviors in terms of personal information, in terms of examination patterns, and you can use those models and classify them that, hey, they needs to be supported in this means, they needs to be supported in this means, they have a lacuna here and there, right? Other is building a new model, right? So when the domain or the problem domain gets changed, you don't find the model. Okay, that means, and now you have to create a new model. Suppose in this pandemic, right? So the students' data was well trained, and there are existing models by which you can tell that whether students are doing good and bad. But that was not the pandemic scenario, was not there. Okay, so in the pandemic scenario, the student family is affected with health, the student family is affected with finance, the student family maybe affected with so many other internet connectivity. So these are the issues which were not being considered. So now if you have to assess the students under this particular condition, we have to build a different type of a different model for which we require some sort of data and these things. So this is also a particular challenge of AI also. So what Akhil has said, that it is fine that AI can do for the scenarios which are very well analyzed and where we have a lot of data. Okay, you can use the existing models, or you can part up the existing models a bit. But the scenarios which are very challenging, which didn't occur much, we don't have the data for those scenarios to build the AI model itself is a challenge. And we don't want the pandemic will last for 10 years so that we can have enough data so that we can work on that. So that's That's a scenario. So now what people are trying to do, people are trying to do a multiple AI models in a mix and match. They're doing something called transfer learning type of techniques. But for decisive cases like deciding whether a student is doing good or bad and those type of things are challenging. So for our work, what I can tell you is that we have started developing a work to train the doctors. So doctors, so we are building efficient 3D analytics models by which the doctors get trained on the different type of data sets, and they can identify the different types of deformities in the 3D scales. And we have developed this in the collaboration with PLS Hospital Kolkata. And also I had worked with one of the students in the PhD project where we have tried to find that whether the emotions, whether the body, some of the physiological parameters of the persons, okay, that are influencing or can. So it is an assimilation of gestures, physiological parameter like skin conductance, body temperature. Okay, that means obviously you can tell whether it's a privacy, prevention of privacy. That was in a very controlled environment. We did that, but we have seen that it is not only that means our body is a very complex sensor, right? It actually takes a lot of type of different signals. The signals which are very apparent to us might not be the only signals which are being absorbed by your body. And the body is deciding. That means, as Akhil told, that a girl or a boy can do so many things in a particular way because he has a variety of sensors, and the sensors are working with a lot of hyperplanes, right? Where the sensors data are going to manifold, right? And this manifold, creating the manifold in the system level is a very critical problem. So those are the things. If we can actually have those type of sensors which are working, we can understand that what are the sensor parameters by which a human works. Probably and multiple AI models, probably in the 5 years down the line, we can build some models which are maybe 5 or 8% or 10% close to the human processes.
Great.
Right. And that's
lovely.
Correct me if I'm wrong out here. Aren't AI models supposed to be self-learning in nature? Like the more they work, the more they come up learning with something. So that by default is a learning process that they take to acquire the knowledge.
Yes and no. So there's a whole issue about AI bias, right? So because the thing is, what is AI? What you're talking about is deep learning, right? That means that the machine will come up with scenarios and will keep on, based on the feedback on how they perform the scenarios, will keep on developing their new things. Now, there's actually a great example of actually what happened there. And I'll give you an example. So Microsoft had come up with a AI bot on Twitter, right? And said, okay, we now have this Twitter bot that can sort of speak a human being. What happened was that a lot of the Twitter trolls, a lot of Twitter people started giving it questions in such a way that started the Microsoft bot to start coming up with all racist insults and things like that, and was totally trained to become like that. So Microsoft literally within one day had to pull back the AI bot. The point I'm trying to make at is that ultimately a lot of the deep learning is based on the initial parameters set by the human programmers, right? So in fact, they've actually said, in fact, in Silicon Valley, they say that a lot of the AI has been programmed by white or Asian programmers, and they have a certain worldview. And because of that, the judgments and the decisions that AI makes and the direction that it goes works in a certain way. So a lot of people who are, let's say, African American or different ethnic, or even women, have a tough time actually getting addressed properly by AI compared to that worldview. So I would say that just taking a point, Swoyan, is that the thing is that it can learn, but you, like a small child, like if you teach a child to be honest and ethical, they will learn that. But if you are not a great parent and you just let the child be, they'll do the wrong thing there. So, you know, it's...
So the input matters, right, at the end of the day.
It does. So I got to ask a question.
That is very important for the student level also. The ethical AI, what Akhil has pointed out, it is very important if you are trying to use the AI for the school children and for the different genders, for the people who are coming from different communities and background in a school or a college or a university. So that also that is a very important thing we have to take care.
Correct. Yeah. So let me ask you both a question. So this is actually something that's maybe slightly controversial, right? So because of COVID, the government has in a way woken up and decided to do something about the education system, especially with the Knowledge Commission and the skills, this thing. When you look at, if you had to advise the government, right? Or if you could, let's say, give your inputs, what are the top one or two things that you would advise the government to, let's say, change the assessment model or the education model in this country? So I don't know, whichever one wants to take this first.
I think my first brutal advice to government would be start educating teachers and upgrading the basic educational content delivery mechanism.
Okay.
Like one thing is talking. So I in the past session, people are talking about pizza and toppings. So that's an example on the top of my head. We can't really talk about the toppings when the base is not correct.
Right.
Right? The base has to be right first, is what I think.
Right.
Pure honest opinion of things. But anyway,
Right.
I'll leave it to Professor Amlan to add on more things to it. So.
Sure.
Yeah, that means obviously the adaptive learning system, okay, based on the learning management system, okay, that means as a that means if our main classroom also starts up maybe within 3 or 6 months, right? If you are very optimistic, we can start the physical classes. But still, basically our physical classes are catering only a small bandwidth of the students, right? And majority of the students are left out, right? And their creativity dies up, right? Because they're getting very bad scores, right, in different exams, right? So I think the learning management system, as rightly Swoyan told, that means obviously the teachers need to actually have a sort of baseline, baseline type of the concepts in terms of delivery, right? Baseline delivery should be adapted, and there should be a sort of guideline should be framed up, right? So that it can actually start with from the school level to the college level to the university level. And I think it will be a more sort of holistic education, right? Not actually there should be multiple options, multiple opportunities, multiple going out. That means the student can go. That means that can actually leave a course in between and can start and can think something different. Those type of options should be there, and obviously the learning management system, adaptive learning, and those needs to be included in a total ecosystem.
Okay, great, interesting. So I'll actually just maybe just a little comment. So you all are familiar with PISA, right? The process for international school achievement, where they every 2 years they assess the quality of each country's education based on how children have performed in their schools. And of course, as you know, India unfortunately did not rank very well in the last PISA assessment, and our country chose not to even take part in the next PISA assessment because we didn't want to look bad. But what is interesting, if you take some of the Scandinavian countries like Finland and all, why have they done so well in, let's say, in the school achievement and the way their kids have learned? It's not a matter of technology. And again, very often we all tend to focus on Edtech and saying that the school system or college system is nothing great. Edtech will come in and solve all the problems. But what has actually worked from our research in Finland and other things is that the way that they've managed their teachers, and of course, I mean, in fact, the teachers the teaching profession in Finland tend to attract the best and brightest. 2 reasons. Of course, pay is good. I mean, that's not no question about it. But secondly, a lot of teachers have a lot of freedom to develop their own course curriculum, can actually enjoy the education process. It's not a model where they stuff hundreds and hundreds of bits of information into the syllabus, and the teacher has to rush through the curriculum to complete the exam at the end. The teacher says, look, this is a body of knowledge that we need to cover. And I have my own flexibility into teaching in a certain way. And of course, there's a lot of assessment of the teacher as well. Are they doing well? Are the students doing well? So on and so forth. It's a more interactive process. How education should be done. So I think the point is that if I could actually give one bit of information, one suggestion to the government, is that start learning from best of breed schools in other parts of the world. Don't stuff the curriculum with lots and lots of facts that students will just memorize, do the exam and forget it the next day. Start developing the overall personality of the student. Give the teacher a lot of flexibility to be a mentor, not just be like, just teach an exam. That's the thing. So I think that if the government, it's a kind of a cultural change, but I think it's something that can be done easily without any effort.
I think a lot has to do with, don't you think a lot has to do with the crisis of scale also out here? Yeah. Like in Scandinavian countries, the number of students are less. The number of teachers to be trained and controlled in a system are less. I was talking about we having 40 crore children, and I was doing some reading up last week where I found out in India, 1 million teachers. We have a shortage of 10 lakh teachers in India.
Exactly. Right.
With this kind of a huge system, I mean, we don't have even a choice to adopt, like, acquire the best of the
Exact
minds.
the point. So it's just not the scale. So look at it this way. So we actually have enough schools for all the kids, especially government schools, private schools. The problem is that very often when the kid goes to school, the teachers well paid, government teachers are very well paid, but sometimes the teachers don't show up. There's actually almost a 35 to 40% absenteeism rate throughout the year if the teachers are not being monitored. So the idea is two things, I think. But going back to your point, Swoyan, is that the thing is that if you try to make the teaching profession as something that is aspirational, where the best people come in, and also you monitor how the teachers are doing, trust me, there will be enough teachers. It's just a matter of making it a desirable profession.
That's also to do with the fact that we have to increase our educational spend, which should
Right.
go as salary to the teachers. Like, I'm
Agreed.
talking about my example. Even if we are in a sector where we're running educational organizations, for
Right.
us, being a teacher is not a first preference. And
Yeah.
obviously, money has everything to do with it.
Correct.
Now, how many 95% children are coming back to being teachers?
Exactly. That's
So
true.
I think the pay has to be at par, and for payment to be at par for teachers,
Right.
the educational spending has to go up significantly. We
Correct.
can't do a budgetary accommodation here and expect
Yeah.
the best of quality coming across, right? So
I agree. I agree.
that's
That's true.
that's a
Okay.
structural reform that is required.
Great. So I'm getting frantic messages from Aditya that we need to wind up our our session, and I don't think we have time for any questions from the audience. So I think hopefully you guys have had a good time and you enjoyed our conversation. And I'm glad to see that most of the participants are still on and nobody's dropped out. So I think we all did a good job. The conference here. So I think that's it. So great. I think I'll just I think we can sign off. And Aditya, Sri Lakshmi, do you want any last words, or do we just log out?
Yes, thank you very much for that exciting session.
Okay.
You put forth really valuable points, shedding light on some of the best practices and use cases